The Birth Circle podcast features experts in all the nuanced areas of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum with the aim of helping women make the choices that will keep them safe, healthy, and empowered. We respect all birth choices and believe in supporting informed consent and evidence-based practices. Nothing said on this podcast should be taken as medical advice. You should always seek the advice of a competent professional for your care. Welcome to the Birth Circle podcast.
This is Sarah with Birth Circle, and today I'm so excited to have Sarah and Matthew Bivens with me. And Sarah and Matthew have had their own home births and are now the hosts of Doing It at Home. It's a podcast that shares beautiful and powerful stories and conversations to normalize home birth. And I realized that in all of the episodes we've ever done, we've never done a home birth episode. I've interviewed home birth midwives, doulas, and we talk about home birth. I'm really excited to get nitty-gritty about what actually a home birth is and how you go about deciding if it's right for you and all the ins and outs. So thank you for joining me, Sarah and Matthew. I'm so excited.
Thank you. We're excited. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So how did you get started? How many children do you have? How many are home births? Just give us like this rundown of your background.
Yes. So we have one daughter. Her name is Maya, and she's 4 years old. And so that's our only home birth to this date.
Mm-hmm. Yet.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. And so did you start out knowing that you wanted a home birth, or was it an accident, or how did it happen?
We definitely didn't start out planning a home birth.
Definitely not.
Both Sarah and I came from households where, any conversation around birth or any thoughts around birth was hospital.
For sure.
You go to a hospital, my dad's a doctor, my mom's a nurse. So I'm just very used to hospitals and doing things that way. And it wasn't until after we got pregnant that the idea of home birth crept in for both of us.
And how did that come in? I mean, it's not something that's getting more normalized, but it's still what 1 or 2% home births in the United States.
Yes, around there. Yeah, it is less than 2. So it wasn't until about 15 weeks, I would say, into the pregnancy that I started thinking differently about birth in general. And by that, one resource really started tipping my thoughts over the edge around it. And that was Happy, Healthy Child. It was a holistic approach to birth, and it was a DVD series. And in that, I just saw birth depicted in a way that I had never seen before, heard it talked about in ways I'd never heard it talked about before, that it could be this transformative, empowering, beautiful, magical experience, and that it was an experience, right? And not always a medical condition to be controlled or manipulated. And in just looking at that and starting to feel differently about it, I started to think about for the first time, well, how do I actually want to feel in my birth? How do I want it to go? How do I want to experience it? Mm-hmm. And through that conversation, started to kind of put together this vision for it and things that I would ideally like to experience, one of which being moving about freely if I could, not being hooked up to any monitors. I knew I was very healthy, very low risk. And so with that, okay, well, here's some things we'd like to experience. Maybe water would be great. And, when we first became pregnant, we went to our OBGYN, the only person I had seen for annuals a couple of times, didn't have a real intense relationship established. And, we started and established care there. And it was, like I said, around 15, 16 weeks, we brought up, hey, these are some things we're thinking about for our birth. Are these things possible, with your practice and in the hospital that we're en route for? And a lot of those things were just getting checked off the list.
Meaning he was saying no to
couldn't, removed from the list of possibility.
Yeah. I mean, we put together, like Sarah mentioned, like a list of intentions. Mm-hmm. This is what we would like to have. This is our vision. And we just literally presented, I think we had it on our phone. And we just went through it and said, can we do this here? And he just said, no.
Yes.
Huh. And was that surprising to you?
Not incredibly.
Yeah, I guess not super surprising. Mm-hmm. I think for us, we are very intentional people with just about everything we do. So, there is forethought and having a vision behind things. And so we understand that sometimes the pathway that we're on is not the pathway that'll help us get to that ultimate destination. So when we presented those things to him, we were clear that was going to be the way that our birth unfolded. And him saying no simply was him letting us know that it wasn't going to be on this path. So I wouldn't say that we were surprised, because it was like, no, this just won't be the path for us, meaning giving birth at this hospital won't be the path for us.
But it never
So
hurts to ask. And if he'd said
never
yes,
hurts
then
to
it would have
ask.
been fine. And you didn't take it
Yep,
personally. You just like, oh, okay, no, all right, no problem. He has the right to
exactly.
practice the way he wants to practice.
Exactly. And I
Okay.
think it
Yeah,
was that understanding and that maturity that we brought to the situation that allowed for that dialogue to take place, and that he was open to the conversation, and he appreciated us being very
Yeah.
transparent with how we were feeling. And now, our understanding and all the conversations we've had, the things we desired are possible in hospital settings.
oh,
They
For
for sure.
sure.
certainly are.
But
Yeah.
he just did, it wasn't his style. And I'm glad to hear you
Right.
didn't burn the office on your way out. So that's
Yeah.
good. Everybody's,
No, it was
yeah.
great. I mean, we had an understanding of one another,
Mhm.
even though we just didn't agree.
Yes.
Yep.
And his philosophy, home birth wasn't part of what
And
he
he was really
believed in.
respectful to your
Yeah, we
research
were
and
cool.
everything.
He very much was.
And so
Cool.
we left that appointment pretty clear that we were no longer going to go down that
Yeah.
route. And then that opened us up to, okay, so what are our options?
Mhm.
And we had been watching this series. We have people in our friend groups and our circles who we could turn to ask different questions, and who then ultimately pointed us in the direction of some other resources. One of them was it a doula?
A nurse midwife
nurse
who worked
midwife.
in a hospital, who then knew of midwives who did home births. So it
Okay,
was
so you got
through
some
these kind of
referral.
degrees of separation, had a conversation with the nurse midwife who worked out of a hospital. And then she said, well, I know this midwifery practice and they do home births in your area. Why don't you have a conversation?
But
Yep.
even before that, we were looking at a birth center,
That was
because
opening up in Atlanta.
I was not interested in home birth.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so we
oh
didn't,
yeah. Okay.
we didn't,
We'll get the, it's part of the journey, huh?
Yes.
yeah. So we didn't just jump from
We
saying no
didn't.
to a hospital to jumping yes into home birth. It was like, no hospital. So what else is there?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the next stepping stone for me was like Hospital Light, which was a birth center. And so
Yeah.
there was a new one opening in Atlanta, and Sarah got in touch with them, and
Mhm.
we had conversations, and it seemed like a cool option for us. It was kind of like we get to be in a kind of relaxed environment. It's kind of like a home,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
there's
The
professionals and
good,
people there, and yeah, it was like a
good
nice middle
medium.
ground.
But
Yeah, nice medium.
I want to pick your brains for a little bit, because the situation you guys are in is very abnormal in that both partners are 100% on the same page. So
Now we are.
Yeah.
oh, okay. So okay. All right.
Yeah.
So maybe pretend Matthew's not here for a minute. Sarah, was there any moment where you doubted like that your partner was going to go along with you, that you were realizing that your path was going to be a little bit non-traditional, and you were wondering if he'd be okay with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Going back, I think ultimately, because of how I understand Matthew and our relationship, if I was really set on home birth, I knew it would happen. It's just kind of what would be the cost in terms of
Yeah, relationship.
yeah, where might there be
Yeah.
some edge in terms of how fully on board is he? Do I feel fully supported? Is there any kind of resentment that could crop up later? I think at the time, if I could put myself back in that place, I didn't question if I wanted home birth, if it was ever possible. It's just kind of what would we have to get through
Oh, I
to
love
come
that.
to a place of resolution around it.
Okay, so now
Because
Matthew, let's
yeah.
pretend Sarah's not here. Tell me about your thought process, like when she first brought the idea to you. So you'd been kind of like going in the middle there with the birth center, but
Yeah.
what was your thought process this whole time, and how did you, like, when did you have to pretend to be supportive, and when were you actually supportive? And then when,
So yeah, hospital was what was most comfortable, because that's what I'm used to. That's what you see on TV and movies. Birth center was a happy medium. Home birth, I didn't really know what it was. I had never had any sort of conversations about home birth, examples of home birth. In my mind, it was not people that I knew of, like giving birth to babies in fields and stuff like that. I really had no idea. It's very ignorant. And so the idea of being totally removed from the authority that at the time I felt was necessary for birth, that idea scared me.
mm-hmm.
And I shared that with Sarah, like, I'm not super comfortable with this. Like, this is what's coming up for me. And at that point in time, Sarah was definitely more on board with home birth. And it didn't create a wedge between us. There wasn't like a rift or anything. It was just simply something that we were talking about, because ultimately both of us are playing for a successful, amazing, peaceful, happy birth. And so we're both wanting the same thing. It was just, let's talk very honestly about what comes up along the way.
Yeah.
So I
And
never felt we were on either sides of this conversation. Like she had to convince me or I had to convince her. It never felt that way.
so, but you both put having an incredible birth together, an incredible experience together as the main priority, and let the fears kind of take their place behind that main priority.
Yeah.
I'd say that's
Yeah.
accurate.
I mean, we both wanted that experience. And I think that's what ultimately helped us arrive at home birth, because once each of us started to learn a bit more about what went into a home birth, when we started talking to these midwives and having conversations and then watching things, videos and documentaries, we realized, oh wow, the experience we want, the pathway to that for us is home birth. And so the sequence was kind of, Sarah was almost 100% on board. I was like
Not so
20% on
Yeah.
board. And then once we started having those conversations and we did a little bit more research, and especially for me, when I had a conversation with the midwife, I was like, oh, done.
Okay, so
Absolutely, we're doing home birth.
Yeah, what were some of the things she said that you're like, oh, yeah, done?
For me, the biggest fears were, what if something goes wrong? Like, what happens if it doesn't go according to plan? What do we do? And what helped alleviate that was just the amount of experience that our midwives had was tremendous. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of births between them. And we were in their office, and the walls are just lined with pictures of families and the stories of, and I thought, they've seen it all. They've experienced
Yeah,
everything,
yeah, I've seen it all.
you
And the cool
know?
thing, I just like put a plug in for home birth and just midwives in general, is they see a lot more than the OB does because they're in the room longer. They're there
Mhm.
throughout the
Yeah.
process. They see like the whole climax of the story, the whole.
Yeah, all of it.
Hmm.
So I was like, they've seen it all. They're so they're so experienced. They know what they're doing. Because again, in my mind, the authority that knew what they were doing was the doctor. Nobody else knows what they're doing in birth except for doctors. That was what my thought was.
Hmm.
But I'm like, wait a minute, these women, they know what they're doing. So that was the first thing I could check off my box to make me feel better. The second thing was, okay, well, what is the plan should things not go according to plan A?
Hmm.
And once we came up with our contingency plans, done. I was like, okay, cool.
So
This is what we're
what
doing.
were
And
some of the, yeah, what were some of your boundaries, your contingencies, like your, oh, no questions asked, we're transferring, or no, whatever. What were your lines?
That's a great question. We did know that if there came a point where I just desired a transfer, which we came to understand collectively that the number one reason for transfer is non-emergency and that it's just sheer exhaustion. Mama needs to maybe get that epidural or whatever she needs to rest and then potentially still move through a vaginal birth if that's what she desires.
Right.
So once we were clear on that, if that was a possibility, we knew we had a backup OB who we did have an appointment with and established rapport with, and he was in full support of home birth.
very home birth friendly.
And so that was wonderful.
This isn't the first one you met with. This was someone else that just
Somebody
Someone
else.
else. Yes.
Neat.
Yes.
It's
And
about 30 minutes away from us. So it wasn't the closest
Right.
hospital to us, but he was so pro home birth, and his practice was all about supporting
family
home birth
centered.
families. Yeah.
Yes. And
So that was option B.
So we knew that. And then there is a hospital about 10 minutes away from us in the event of plan C, a more emergent sort of transfer, whether that was hemorrhaging or anything else that we trusted our midwife would see coming or be aware of, or get us to where we needed to be before it was an extreme emergency.
Yeah.
So we knew that. And as far as what would qualify transfer, anything other than our midwife would be in observance of that we wouldn't probably know we were experiencing. The exhaustion was just the main thing I understood was a possibility. And so it helped you to have the contingency plans.
Yes. I mean, once I was like, okay, cool. This is plan A. Here's plan B. Here's plan C. Awesome. I feel great. Let's rock and roll. And so at that point, I was 100% on board. I was like, done.
Did you
All
have
the
any
fears gone.
friends that had done this before that you could pick their brains?
Zero. We knew nobody.
No.
Pioneers, huh? So
We
then
knew
when you
nobody.
told your friends, did you keep it quiet or did you tell your friends that you were planning this
We
crazy thing?
shared.
We
We
did,
shared with
yeah.
everyone. And, it's cool to see now on this other side and having hundreds of conversations with different families, how there are so many ways you can go about it. We know some that go totally quiet, don't
Yeah.
say anything
Yeah.
until your baby arrives, or, kind of give some fibs here and there as to what hospital. Oh, this one over here,
no,
or,
central.
or just change the subject.
Yeah.
But we did share. And overall, I would say, 85-90% was
cool.
very positive, was very supportive, was very understanding. And there were a couple sprinkles of, mostly on my side of the family, I don't support this, I can't support this. So
yeah, and it was
what did your parents think, Matthew?
so I thought my
Surprisingly.
parents were going to have some feedback because again they're from
I
the
love how
medical
you said
world.
that. Some
Yeah,
feedback.
but they were cool. They were like
Really?
awesome. My mom wanted to be there. She ended up being
Mhm.
present for the birth. My dad was on board. I mean, my parents have known me to do things my own way, which a lot of times
And
isn't.
they've just accepted that.
And they're accepting and they're trusting. They're
Mhm.
trusting that when I make a decision, I know I've done my research, I've had my conversations, I'm making this decision from a centered, peaceful space, and
Yeah.
they trust that. And so they were on board. And then Sarah had a little bit different experience,
I did.
but
Your parents
it's
were less enthused?
Less, yes, for sure. My mom and one of my sisters, just kind of gave the conversation coming from a concerned place, and yet it's a fear place. And that was, I can't support this. If you were born at home, you wouldn't have made it, because I had the umbilical cord around my neck. And then to learn through, evidence
pretty
and
normal.
statistics,
Yeah.
that's very common.
yeah.
So things like that, you really don't know how it'll feel until you're a certain point into it. And this is just very selfish. This isn't just about you. You need to think about your baby. Those were the kinds of conversations. And, it was a great opportunity for, of course, me, and then us together as a couple and as a family, to feel empowered and affirmed in our choice. Because like many choices in parenting and pregnancy and birth and life, there's going to be opposition, or there's going to be people very close to you who love you, who won't agree. And if you're going to, be beat down by that every single time it happens, then that's going to be a pretty unpleasant way to live. And as far as we've seen now, being parents for 4 years, that birth conversation was the tip of the iceberg, because then after that, you're going to make choices around your child's life that everyone is not going to agree with. So it was just
You are so spot on. And so this is not just a conversation you just get through. Some people say, I know I've had moms say, oh, I just didn't want to rock the boat. I just caved or whatever, because I just didn't want to make my mom or my mother-in-law mad at me. But you're saying, oh my gosh, this is just the beginning. Then you have the vaccination, the circumcision, the whether you feed them organic or not, breastfeeding or bottle feed. I
all
mean,
of it.
all of it. This is
And there was
just
so much
beginning.
before. There was so much before. I mean, we're in an interracial relationship. Some people don't dig that. We choose to move away from our family. Some people wouldn't dig that.
Yeah.
We choose
And
to
was your timing? Are you financially secure enough to have a baby?
all of it. Yeah.
all of it. And
Yeah.
so it each one of those things gives you a chance to stand by what you believe in, and to be convicted in what your
Oh, I love
stance
that
is and your
word.
values.
So what are some of
And
the things you can say? So for beginning, conviction 101.
Yeah.
If you feel like this is the first hard, crucial conversation you've ever had with your family, or even your partner, what are some of those things that you can say that even if you like, because I know sometimes you can be convinced that this is kind of what you think you want, but then trying to convince someone else, it makes you feel doubtful. But does that mean,
Absolutely.
Totally.
so what are some of the things that you could say whilst preserving your own confidence, your own feelings, but let the other person know they've overstepped a boundary that you're just now creating because you've never had boundaries before and now they're new?
Yeah.
I think one of the first things is you just gaining clarity for yourself. What's important to you and why?
I love that.
Because when the person is giving you their opinion or their feedback, like I said, it's because they're sharing what's important to them and why.
Yep.
So if you aren't clear what's important to you and you aren't strong in your why, your reason behind it, then you can easily feel intimidated or dominated by a person who is very clear.
Oh, I love that. And then the other important point is that you don't have to convince that person to come to your side.
It's not
Nope.
your job.
Not your job at all.
What's a great statement to say, we agree to disagree, but
Yeah.
more diplomatic than that.
Well, that's what we essentially said with our OB. It was like, hey, listen, let's understand each other and we don't have to agree. Yeah. So let me understand your perspective. Oh, okay. This is your birthing philosophy. That's how you were trained. Got it. Here's our perspective. This is what we believe in. Here's why, our reasons. Got it. Well, listen, we understand each other. We don't agree, but I don't love you any less.
Yeah. Love it. Perfect. Okay. So now on to your birth. Tell me about, you had all this plans. First of all, the fact you picked a home birth for your first one, yay. That's so fun. Because normally it's a reactive response to something else, or it's hey, it can be, or it could be hey, I'd like to try something new. But to have somebody pick home birth as their first birth, that's less normal, I think. So, so you had all this preparation, but I mean, how can you really prepare for something like that? Yeah. So what went as planned, what you thought would, that really met your expectations, and what surprised you about the process?
The birth itself.
Labor and then the birth.
What showed up the way that we intended and I believed it would was our team. We had a really powerful birth team, and that consisted of few more people than I would say the average birth, particularly the first birth, particularly the first home birth.
How many midwives, doulas, photographers, videographers, how many did you have?
All the roles. So we had our main midwife and we had 2 apprentices. So that's 3 right off the bat. And this is in our tiny, we'll call it a master bedroom, but it's a bedroom.
Okay. She's air quotes.
Yes. And then Matthew's mother, and then 2 couple friends of ours. So man, woman. So in total, all those bodies.
So that's at least 8. Sorry.
Yes.
No, 9. That's
and
9.
Then plus a lot of souls in that room.
Wow. And you had guy friends there. That surprised me too. You don't usually see that.
Yes. So we, through conversations and some of the birth stories that I had read, listened to, watched, I heard this thing that can happen for the birth partner after the experience to be completely exhausted, and rightfully so, but also they're not getting nature's flood of hormones and that cocktail to kind of support them. So I just thought about this man and I thought, someone needs to make sure that he's drinking, that he's eating. Like, I want that. So we had a daddy doula, one of our friends, who he was actually born at home, and he was very supportive of our choice. And he's a mentor and someone really close in our life. And I just thought he would be perfect to
Oh my gosh. So his
him.
job was to take care of Matthew.
And he did. He cooked food
I
for
love
him.
it.
What was cool is I feel like the big role that he played was male energy support. So that, I felt just, I had like another king in the room with me. And then,
oh my goodness. Okay, I want to talk about that in a minute too.
Yeah. And then the physical support was cool because I was spending so much time counter pressure for Sarah, like pressure on her hips, pressure on her back. And so, the labor was about 12 hours long, and I needed a break every once in a while. So I would swap out and I'd go grab a bite to eat, or I'd go, just take a quick break, and he would step in. And that was, I think, one of the best parts for me, just in the experience itself, because, we would have, for example, Sarah would be in the birth tub and I would be applying pressure on one hip, and our midwife would be applying pressure on the other hip. And then if it had been hours for me and I just needed to step away for 5 minutes, he would come in and just fill in that spot. So that was really cool to have that, where I felt like I was able to support Sarah as best as I possibly could, and just get a quick little 5-minute break when I needed to.
Yeah.
So
well, we joke that it was probably really hard for you, huh? Your wife's labor is really hard for you. Like, we joke, but really, honestly, now that you say it, it's so true. I've seen partners, dads, just completely wiped out after the birth process, and no one's spoon feeding yogurt into their mouths, and nobody's like, they're expected to do all this physical work alongside you, and then also take down the birth tub, and also answer the door for all the visitors, and also wrangle the older kids. And so the fact that I love it. So tell me more about this I want to explore this king energy that you said. That was really fascinating, because here's the thing is about birth is I feel like in a lot of ways, women have been fighting for the right to have the feminine birth space reclaimed, like midwives instead of OBs and doulas, and
Hmm.
have this central, this feminine power going on. And then you have, the dad. And sometimes he's a little out of place, right? And we joke, oh, there's the token testosterone in the room. But the more I realized about the feminine power is it's a yin and yang, right? Feminine, masculine. So talk more
Hmm.
about this what you felt. Okay, Sarah's making great faces. So tell me more about this zing that you felt by having that balance of power.
So for me, it was
Balance of
I
energy. It's not a power thing. It's energy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Sarah is very strong in her yin, feminine goddess energy. She's very strong in her queenliness, and I support that 100% in everything. And I'm very strong in my masculine energy, very strong in that king energy. So at no point in our relationship or in the birth or in the actual bedroom where birth was happening did we feel that there was a need to sort of reclaim the feminine power, anything
Right.
like that. And I'm also very comfortable with a lot of women and being in that space. And so for me, having another male present, it I appreciated, like I said, the physical aspect of, hey, I can come in and we can swap. But then there was also another father in the room
Mm-hmm.
as I was becoming a father.
Mm.
And, you know, he's not my father, and and he doesn't fill a role of a father figure in my life. He's a mentor. And so I just felt connection with that male energy. And to to have that male energy in the room with me the moment that I became a father, one of the the rites of passage or milestones for men, it was significant. And I remember, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but after Maya was born and she was healthy and beautiful, and I felt like I could just relax a little bit and not be on, right? Not be on in my role as a supporter and protector for Sarah. I just hugged him and just started sobbing. And
Mm.
I don't know if I would have had that same reaction if the first person I hugged was one of the women in the room. So I appreciate that male energy. I appreciate the female energy. And in that moment, in that space, that was something that I very much was happy was there with me in the room.
Mm.
I love that. Okay, so then it sounds like you have a very strong relationship anyway, but talk about how being able to really stand in your full strength energies together in that experience strengthened your relationship.
Oh gosh. It, it has impacted our intimacy, our communication, our trust for one another, our acknowledgement and ownership of our creative powers. Like we work together, we parent together, we're married together. So all these creations, all these things that we build and manifest together, I felt like that was a very peak pinnacle moment and experience for that process, for this dance that we're doing called Life Together. And you know we were very intensely in it together. We talked about the exhaustion that can occur with birth partners, and I would totally get it for Matthew, because he felt behind me and supported me through every push, through all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
every surge, everything that was flowing through me, it's like it was cycling through both of us, and he was withstanding and feeling the storm and each crash of the waves just as much as I was. And yeah, and to have the home birth and to then have it have fueled our business and now what we're doing now and
I
continuing
love
to
it.
create, it's been so much. I'm so grateful for the experience. I'm so grateful for the transformation and the breakthrough around all of it, and that we chose it, we intentionally created it. And everyone there in that room was intentionally chosen as well, because we knew they were high energy, because we knew they could hold the space of the honoring of this birth process,
Yeah.
and they had such reverence for it. And so I think that just like dialed everything up. And that birth, so many things were birthed that day beyond Maya.
I love that that what you say could have happened also in a hospital. It wasn't that this was just a magic home birth. If you'd had a provider, if things had worked out, you could have had the same yin yang amazing experience in a hospital as well. Do you think?
I believe so. I believe,
It would
There's
have been
just
different.
more,
it would have been
yeah,
different.
a
Yeah.
little bit
But
different. So then, all right, you guys have the ideal. I mean, this is what pregnant women all over it. If you're not in tears by the time you've gotten to this part in the episode, then we're not doing it right. But I just feel so much like, thank you for explaining what it should feel like. This is like, if you can achieve what Matthew and Sarah have, then I feel like that will do so much for your healing of past traumas, for your relationship going forward, and set you up for an incredible postpartum and parenting experience. Okay, you guys rocked it. Now, what would you say, like, to the women who are struggling with partner support? I mean, even down to
Hmm.
partner not even excited about being
being
pregnant, or partner actively working against, for control, or all of the terrible things that happen in relationships during pregnancy sometimes. What would you say to these women listening to the podcast, or the men,
yeah.
mostly women? What could they go to their partner with? How could they describe this experience that you've just said in a way to help their partner see that this could be something, a relationship goal that they could work on? That, I don't know, does that make sense? What could you
Yeah,
say?
it does. And one of the things that I've learned, I know Sarah has seen as well through our podcast, we've done 300 something interviews with families. When the moms and families strengthen in their advocacy for themselves, things tend to flow. And what I mean is their owning of their own voice,
Mm.
owning of their own truth, the courage to speak their voice, even in the face of somebody who might not agree with it or who might actively try to thwart their plans. We've heard so many different things in our show, and that's one of the biggest, I think, most powerful qualities that a person can develop and strengthen throughout pregnancy and birth is advocacy for yourself. And I go back to my earlier answer, and thing that helped us with our OB, and that was clarity, like being
Mm,
very clear for yourself. And if you are a woman, a mother, a birthing person who doesn't feel supported by your partner, and you're trying to figure out how to have that conversation, I think one of the first places to come to one of the first things to do is to really get clear within your heart for yourself what's important to you and why. And that doesn't make the conversation you're about to have easier. I think that it can help make you feel a little bit more courageous in speaking your voice,
I love it.
and being able to actually have a difficult conversation. And I've got tons of compassion for anybody out there who feels something true in their heart and they're getting opposition from the person that is closest to them. Like, that has to be
It's the
really
worst.
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I pray that they have other support that they can turn to, friends, family, therapists, whatever, to just talk those things
Mhm.
out and vent and release the frustration and process and help formulate a plan, because we're not meant to do these things
That
alone.
exactly. And the thought that you have
Yeah.
to do it alone, that you're fine, I'll just do it myself, is a massive trauma response.
Yeah.
And I just hate to see women going in and going, well, I guess my partner, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe he's still at the bar. And I go into, I just hurt for her, because there's two things going on. First, she's feeling abandoned, but then she's also responding to it with that, well, I have to do everything alone. And I guess I'm the only one that's going to get the empowered experience. And it breaks my heart,
Mm-hmm.
breaks my heart. So, okay, so back to my other question. I'm sorry, I got so sidetracked in all the goodness. So what went not according to plan? What surprised you about the process? Oh,
Ooh.
there we go.
This is a pattern that I've seen come up, and it's almost like you could template this script. I feel like I've heard it so many times and I experienced it myself. I envisioned or imagined the possibility of moving around, dancing, even eating and
Oh,
Going
drinking,
out to eat,
going for a walk in the neighborhood,
like after labor
bouncing,
starts.
yes, once we knew labor was going, bouncing on the yoga ball, and none of that happened.
tell me about what
None.
actually
I didn't
happened.
even touch the yoga ball. I just went straight to the tub, straight to our bathtub.
It's because labor kicked in at like 11 p.m.
Right, but
It
just
was
the
like the
intensity
end.
of it. So regardless of time, I
So
still
there
thought I
wasn't
would
this
be
this fluffy
Yeah.
romantic stuff in the beginning. There was none of that. Your body's like,
no.
go
Well,
big or go home, and we're going home
the-
right now. I mean,
so
go big.
we ended up creating a like very romantic, intimate setting, but it wasn't the way we thought it was
Right.
going to be.
Yeah, it was just different. And, you know, I just went straight to our bathtub. And then once the birth pool got set up, I was straight into that. And I was just inward, and I was intense, and I was focused, and I was pretty quiet, you know, some vocalization before the pushing. And it was just inward and intense and with
Wow.
myself. There was no like
That's the
frolicking
thing. Is
about.
sometimes you never know how you're going to behave in labor. Some women
Yeah.
super gregarious, like you're very gregarious, very social, and then you're boom, focus,
Yes.
head to
Locked in.
yeah. And then some people, they are very determined, very, you know, and then they're like giggling and joking until they go, hold on, I think I need to push my baby out.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's so funny because we've heard all those
We've
different
heard,
stories.
all
And,
the ends of the spectrum.
and what I think was so beautiful about our birth, the way it unfolded, was it was the end of a long day. We had just come from an incredible date. We went to a concert. We went out to eat.
Mm-hmm.
We get home. It's like, oh, wow, labor is beginning. And that was at like 11 p.m. And so from 11 p.m. until about, 4 a.m., we were just by ourselves.
We were.
The candles were lit, soft music,
Wow.
quiet. It was in
Lighting.
like
Go
the
on a
dead
date
of
and have a
night.
baby. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
It was just this incredibly peaceful, intimate time.
Yes.
Like it was
Very
dark.
grateful for that time.
It was very like, it's like that primal space that when animals go to birth, they go into like the dark little caves. We created that, and it was just us. Like it was just us until we said, I'm tracking contractions, and like, okay, we've crossed the threshold that our midwife said to call them. So let's give them a call. And then the cavalry arrived.
Assemble. Yeah.
Yeah. But man, those 4 or 5 hours.
Your
were
word
like,
choices are the best. Cavalry. Cavalry.
Yes. What did I say?
Yeah.
Cavalry. Yeah.
No, I said it wrong. Yeah.
It was like, it was
Did
so
you have your
perfect.
birth catered? And please tell me you have video. Do you have video of it?
We have footage. We have a few photos. One thing we would shift for a second birth is a birth photographer. We knew nothing of that at the time, and the whole podcast has opened our world to that.
Yeah.
But
so we have like cell phone photos and videos, which are cool. We have a lot of them.
It's still great to relive and to have.
They're just not like Instagram filter looking.
Yeah, so true. Awesome. So there's no regrets in how things surprised you, or they're like, oh, next time I want to try this, or do you feel like you arrived, like even though it wasn't, the things that didn't go the way you thought were going to go, they went well anyway, that you have still arrived at what your original goal was?
100%. And one thing that I was able to process, in my own time and embrace and integrate into myself was, I believe our births show up exactly the way we need them to, in accordance with what we're calling into our lives and what we're working through, or what things we're overcoming, what things we have to heal.
Oh, let's go there for a minute. So if you have a really, really hard birth, this isn't because the universe hates you or because you manifested a really crappy birth. Talk to me about what that means.
No, I think it's just giving you the opportunity to move through something of your own creation. So similar to one of the birth affirmations that I connected with was, my surges or my contractions are not more powerful than me or greater than me. They are me.
Mm-hmm.
They're a part of me. I've created these things. And so if that's the case, then it's not about anything battling with me or seeking to take me out or overcome
There's no
me.
enemy.
Yeah. If this is of my creation, then I'm a powerful creator and I can move through this. And there's something for me to learn in this. So this isn't the universe or karma coming at me. This is just me having an experience with which there's something in here for me to squeeze the juice out of and utilize for motherhood, for my work, for my purpose in this world. And even if your birth goes none of the way you expected it to, and unfortunately, my heart breaks, the traumatic elements, again, that's not saying that that's the birth then that you wanted, or you brought to yourself. It's just, that was an experience, and it's giving you now an opportunity to look at that and to move
Yeah.
through it.
And each birth is so different. You can have a really hard physical one time, and then the next one be relatively easy, and then go back to the long and hard. And
Yeah.
it's also has to be where you are in your life and where
Mhm.
you're right. I love that. I love every birth is everything is an opportunity to
Yeah.
learn and grow and be your better self. Awesome. So if you're on the fence, trying to figure out, okay, home birth, birth center, hospital, what are some of the things, what are some of the questions you could ask yourself and your providers that could help tip that so that you have more conviction in your choice?
That's great. So on the provider front, one thing early on that we heard somewhere in our conversations was just to ask your provider about their philosophy on birth and their main beliefs around birth, and kind of get a feel for the space they hold around birth. Is it a medical condition to be managed? Is it an experience to, hold space for and do as minimal as possible? I think those are great questions to get in dialogue with your potential care providers around, to see if that's gelling with you and if that's aligning with your core set of values and beliefs, and if what the picture they've painted, if that's a place you can see yourself inserted in to have this really big life experience. And so I think on a care provider front, that's something to look at. I think as far as yourself and knowing yourself, thinking about when you do have potentially stressful or trying situations, whether they be physical, mental, emotional, are you the kind that likes to have more management, or like have the backups or have the professionals on standby, or do you like to kind of go inward, process yourself, all of those things I think are great to think about in knowing yourself. And then from there, where do you feel most comfortable geographically to have this kind of experience? And just some of the things I asked myself early on, I knew I wanted to move freely. So like when you're thinking about the birth experience, where do you see yourself? Where do you see your partner? How do you want to feel? And, setting aside, what are those things? And then, do a lot of those things align, and are they possible in home birth, a place that you might not have actually thought before, but now that I think about it, I'm a great candidate for home birth based on these things. That for someone who's on the fence, I think just seeing and affirming that it is an option for you, it is a possibility should you want that. Just the fact that you have options is a power boost.
So how do
And
you know if
then
you're a candidate? I mean, you're saying, a lot of times it's like, well, if it's not broken, don't fix it. If I don't have any strong feelings against the hospital, why would I want to pick a home birth? So what would, even that, like, how could you swing either way?
that's a great point.
I think one of the best things that people can do, whether they're on the fence or even if they're just like, oh, whatever, go listen to some stories
Yeah,
Oh, I
other
love
people's
it.
experiences.
and be exposed to alternatives, right? I
Love
think
it.
that was like, for me, I didn't know the questions to ask when all I was thinking was hospital. I didn't realize that, oh, there actually is something that is much more aligned with what I would like, but I had no idea. I was like, oh well, the hospital seems totally fine. And there are people that the hospital is totally fine. That's awesome. Rock on, do you. I love having a wealth of experiences to draw from. And if I don't have my own experience, I want to go listen to somebody else's.
Love
And
it.
so, we watched birth videos.
Mhm.
We were looking at the documentaries. We didn't see any podcasts around home birth, which is why we created it. And I think that's a great place to go. Just, make sure that the sources you're seeking the information from, understand where they're coming from. Maybe if they have an agenda one way or the other. That's why we're always talking about, just we have an empowering, honest, and real stories on our podcast. They don't always end up in the peachy rosy, but they're always honest and real. And so I think if you are on that fence, or if you're just wanting to even have a little bit of curiosity, go listen to other people's stories. Go watch different depictions of birth, because a lot of times we're conditioned by what we've been seeing and what we've been told over and over and over and over and
Yeah,
over, and we don't even think outside the box because we don't even realize there is a box. But
it's true.
when we
You don't know what
started,
you don't know. So
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I became so aware of after doing our podcast and having our home birth is almost every single depiction of birth that I see on TV and movies is disempowering, chaotic,
Yeah.
screaming. Like,
mm,
it seems like a frenzied, scary
yeah,
experience from comedy movies to TV shows. You know, it's just, that's kind of the conditioning that I was conditioned in. I'll speak for myself. And so when I saw my first home birth video, I was like, wait a minute, like they're
Yep.
just chilling.
Yeah,
Like,
you see the impact. I know we call it inception. From the beginning with birth videos, we're getting steam. I started in 2011 doing birth videos, and they were just making such a huge impact because what we say is you can't unsee an
yeah,
empowered birth. You can't unsee it. So whether it's hospital, home, birth center, you can't unsee it, just like you can't unsee Hollywood. So then the key is
yeah,
to replace what you've seen
Yeah.
by Hollywood and by, I would not recommend going on YouTube. I'd say go to my website or go to birthcircle.com where things are,
Yeah.
but watch for every one dumb movie you saw, watch 10 empowered births, and
yeah,
it will replace
it will.
your almost like unconscious memory, right? I just know that
Absolutely.
it just made such a difference for me. My first home birth, nobody knew about it. I was kind of undercover. The second one, I was a little bit more emboldened because I was like, I can do this. Don't care who knows about it. But there weren't a lot of stories. There weren't a lot of films in 2011. And so I just didn't, I saw one, and it made such an impact on my second home
Yeah.
birth. Such an impact. So, okay, last question. If you're in an area where home birth isn't the norm, if you are really, because I live in an area, we are probably the reason that the statistics is even 2% in the United States, just my like
Nice.
little pocket with the home birth, everything. I very, very rarely am in the hospital home birth. But if you're in an area where it's really rare, or even in some cases, midwives, it's illegal for them to practice,
Mm-hmm.
you really want a home birth, what are some of the things that you can do to prepare your space? Just how can you be a pioneer for yourself?
Yeah. That's a great, I mean, and depending on where you live, that's going to vary, right? That's what's so fascinating about it. Some of the things that I've seen and we've heard about, is just taken to the Facebook groups in your area, taking to the communities where people might even just be aware of home birth, whether that's chiropractic communities or homeopathic doctors, holistic approach to kind of anything. If you're able to find that in your area and putting feelers out there, there are traditional midwives and other things like that. We've also heard great examples where moms' families have struck up dual care, where they've been able to establish some care with the hospital if, home birth is not as common in their area, so that they do have that as a backup whilst working with someone they've been able to find, on the outskirts of their community. Some have been willing to travel, and some have been willing to go to another state and maybe hang out there for a little bit.
I posted births here in Utah.
There you go.
Yeah, where,
Yep.
you get to a certain point in the pregnancy and we're off to wherever to go have our birth. So that's
babycation.
yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Copyright that word.
Yeah.
I think it's important. You got to do what helps put you in that peaceful space. And you talked about how do you best prepare your space. I think the first space to prepare is your internal space. Prepare that, and then the external space, you hear a lot about that. Like, okay, what equipment do I need? The things on the walls and the candles and music, all important. Yet the internal space, I think, comes first. And, to just double down on what Sarah said about the Facebook groups, that's one of the things that is available to people now. When you don't know anybody in your area, you can go online and connect with folks. And
Love it.
that's just one of the beautiful ways to use technology. And, we have a Facebook group that is not location dependent. It's everybody all over the world. And we see posts like that, like, hey, in my area, I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with XYZ. Can I get some support? And then, dozens of people jump in and give support.
Tons of help.
Yeah.
It's everybody wants to support. And when you get in the birth community, everybody wants to help.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They do. Okay. So thank you so much. Tell us all of the resources that people can use to connect with you.
Yes. So our website is where you can see most of what's happening with us, diahpodcast.com.
Which stands for Doing It at Home.
I
love it.
Doing it at
Yes.
home.
DIAH
Which, that's what we did. We did it at home.
Doing it.
That's where it came
You
from.
made the baby at home. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You birthed
we
the
heard
baby at home.
We heard people talking about, like, we did it at home, or we're doing it at home. I was like, oh, that's a perfect name for our podcast.
Yeah.
Doing it at home. So yeah, our podcast, our website.
Yeah, website. We're active on social media. We have our private Facebook group for the community, which is great, a way to engage more and, like we were just mentioning, support each other.
What's the name of it?
It's the Doing It at Home Birth Group. And our book is coming out shortly. So the Doing It at Home book, our guide to home birth. So
very cool. And this is the book is kind of like you synthesizing the 300 home births you've heard about and kind of putting together a.
Yes, I would say it's a collection of all of the beautiful knowledge we've been able to acquire through those experiences. And then we also get into the fullness of our experience too, to kind of offer that up as an example for anything that resonates or anything you want to take from what we did, anything you might want to do different, the total opposite of what we did. You know, we offer ourselves up as guinea pigs in that sense that, you know, you can take from it, whatever.
And it's important to mention that Sarah and I, we're both balanced lifestyle coaches. And we have been coaching and for people for many years, and we've been in coaching and mentorship circles ourselves. And so a lot of that comes out in the book as well.
Yeah.
So we're not just talking about, you know, adopt an empowered mindset. We'll actually dig into how you can do that. I love it. Because
how? Because so many people just talk, you know, there's all these empowering memes and these lovely inspirational quotes, but how do you actually get to the nitty gritty of these mindset changes and you go over that in your book?
We go over the book.
Yeah.
You know, one thing is like, you got to be able to look at the stuff that is in there already, you know, and it's being able to allow that stuff to come to the surface. So face some of those thoughts and those beliefs that you have.
Perfect.
Do they serve you? Are they loving thoughts? Are they healing? Are they abundant? Are they fearful? Are they scarcity? Are they, you know, all of those, you got to be able to look at it to see what is, and then go about addressing them. And stuff like that is, Sarah's done such a fantastic job breaking it down in the book, because I wrote about this much of the book, like that much. And
little tiny, weeny
little tiny little paragraph.
But this much emotional support.
So big. Got it. Cool. Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Please visit us at birthcircle.com, join our Facebook groups, or find us on Instagram and Pinterest. We hope you'll use our resources to support your birthing experience.